I want you to get together.
Hello everyone. So I am driving home from a wedding that I've just photographed. This was a last minute booking. They only booked me 2 weeks ago, which is wild. They left it really last minute, and they're lucky I'm a brand new company who needs the business, because most photography companies are booked up by this point in summer, you know. So I took the gig, you know, and I literally just pulled a 10-hour shift documenting their entire day. And I'm driving home now, and while I was doing this, someone on the Telegram group asked a question about this theory that there were people created before Adam, and Adam and Eve were not the first humans ever created, the first of mankind, but there was a pre-Adamic race of humans, okay, and that's how it was phrased. And when he asked this question, all I could think was, well, this is something that Gary Wayne was talking about like 7 years ago, and he called it the peoples of day 6. So this isn't a new concept, you know, and it got me thinking, you know, I thought, how many people don't know this or haven't thought about this concept? Because to me, this is the thing, I got to that point where it's like, it's a given to me. Like, I kind of already have taken in the knowledge and applied it to my worldview in a way, you know, and I'm not saying I 100% believe it, yes or no, but I consider it a huge possibility and probability. But of course, I'm always subject to change my opinions. But the evidence Gary Wayne presented for this idea that there was human beings were on the earth way before Adam and Eve were created, to me, he makes an extremely compelling case, to the point where I've even put it into my own book that I'm writing now, about the Nephilim looking like clowns. So the first section of my book is 10 chapters, basically going through biblical history with all the extra conspiracy opinions thrown in there about what really happened, you know. Because this phrase has been coined, a mainstream churchianity view on what happened, and then there's the alternative conspiracy worldview of what happened in the biblical past. And the mainstream churchianity view is very basic, very, very simplistic and minimalistic, and doesn't answer the hard questions at all. And one of these hard questions is things like, who did Cain marry and fill all these cities with that he built? You know, so when Cain killed Abel and then was exiled with a mark from God into the lands, it says he took a wife and then he built a city and named it after his first son Enoch. Now, cities aren't easy to build. You need manpower and labour to build cities, you know. And Cain, being kind of like a godlike human being who knew Adam and was taught stuff by Adam, you know, and Adam walked with God, I think, you know, Cain was an extremely knowledgeable, powerful being. So he must have convinced a workforce to build cities. He knew how to build cities, for God's sake. So he was a master mason, clearly, you know, and he understood geometry to a level that, you know, was just mind-blowing. And I'm not worshipping Cain here when I say these things, but I'm saying he was a knowledgeable individual who built cities. He was a city builder. But this is the issue. You need people to fill cities. You need people to build cities and live in cities. And this whole idea that, you know, Cain married his sister and then had sex with his children and interbreeding, and it's all this incestual stuff, just didn't sit right or fly right with me, and it's not really a satisfactory answer. It's not. I think even if that was the case, they would have to have sex so much and have children back to back so often just to fill the earth that quick enough to do what is basically said in the Bible, in Genesis, you know. So you go to extra biblical text, you know what I mean, to try and figure out what's going on. And I cannot do Gary Wayne's work justice here. Just go and type in people of day 6, Gary Wayne, and you'll get a plethora of explanations from the man himself, you know. But I mentioned in my own book, you know, that this seems to be what was going on. Because if you look at, let's say, the Watchers, it seems like they were on the earth appointed to watch over humanity, okay? And this has always been the case from the beginning, before Adam and Eve were even cast out, you know. And there's this thing in the Popol Vuh, I think it's a Mayan if I'm correct. It could be Aztec. It's like a Mayan document, this religious text. And it talks about an entity, a being, that was ordained in gold and shining precious stones, who gave fire to the people, you know, and was worshipped as a god. And he was the watcher over all the people, you know, and he was adorned and adulated as this wonderful being. And in the story, he got really proud, tried to climb into heaven and put himself above the creator, and then was thrown down from the big world tree, you know, and cast down, basically. So this is the story of Lucifer's rebellion in a culture that has absolutely no right to be talking about the biblical story of Lucifer's rebellion. It seems like Lucifer and many seraphim angels were originally ruling over humanity as gods. And the initial rebellion comes from not wanting to bow down to and be ruled over by a human. So who were all these people Lucifer ruled over before the rebellion happened? Before Lucifer said, I am not bowing down to a man, to God, basically. Well, you know, these were the peoples of day 6. It seems like if you read the Bible, so this is me trying to hit some of the points Gary Wayne says, okay? So if you read the Bible, off the top of my head here, it says basically God created man and woman and then told them to go forth, be fruitful and multiply. Okay? Then in the very next verse, it says God created Adam and put him in the Garden of Eden. So those are two different stories, which people have, in the mainstream churchianity view, have assumed is telling the same story of the same thing. One's just metaphorical, one's literal or something. I don't know how they try to justify it. But we're talking about two separate creation accounts there, about two different sets of beings. So the first creation was man and woman, plural, together. Many, probably. Man and woman, okay? So that doesn't just mean, you know, one man, one woman. But he created both sexes at the same time and said, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. Okay? Go. Spread. And that's what they did. And then it seems sometime after, but in the next verse in Genesis, we don't know how much time has passed since this, but then it says, you know, God created Adam and put him in a garden in the east of Eden. So put him into the Garden of Eden, you know. So this is basically saying God created man and then at some point decided man will be the true ruler over earth and the caretaker, okay? And even the watchers will bow down to them. And he basically took a man out of the people of day 6, or he created Adam as a new type of human. Like the original people of day 6 were the prototypes, and Adam was the perfected man, okay? And God put him in a separate place, away from all these other people, and started to basically groom him and train him to be a leader. And he even gave him the opportunity to name the animals, something not even the angels were bestowed. And I think a lot of angels were watching this and were like, hang on, why is God teaching all this stuff to a primitive human? Are we not better than them? Are we not gods among the people of day 6? And no, how dare he consider asking us to bow down to this thing and serve them, you know? Sorry, I got some guy riding my ass here. And it's kind of, how dare he, you know, do that, basically. There we go. And that's where the rebellion comes from, you know, and it answers a lot of things. This narrative just makes sense to me, you know, because we're just told, you know, oh, Lucifer just rebels. He wants to be like God. Like God to who? Who exactly is he wants to be like a god to, you know? Like, you can't just... You have to wonder, like, who were the peoples that were worshipping Lucifer like a god to make him want to be God? Who was worshipping God in that time that Lucifer was jealous of? You know what I mean? Like, it's never explained, but it does make sense if you consider that there were people on the earth worshipping the angels. You know, they were caretakers of the earth. The people were told to subdue it and spread and multiply, and they had watchers over them. the angels to watch over them, and these angels had the privilege of being gods among men, you know, and they didn't like it when that status quo was about to be changed, so they rebelled. And the rebellion then goes into, we're going to corrupt God's creation. This Adam he's created with his Eve, we're going to corrupt it, because a human should not be ruler over earth. It should be a reptilian entity like us, a seraphim type being. The reptile is far superior to the mammal. That type of attitude. You know, our children, the reptiles, the dragons and dinosaurs that we've put all over the earth, probably during this ancient weird time we know very little about, you know what I mean? These lizards that we've built in our image, they should have been given the right, you know. And Gary Wayne speculates that these lizard men were upright walking, humanoid-like shaped lizard people, and they were the children of the angels, or a creation of the angels, let's say. And he speculates it was probably one of these lizard men people that was the snake in the Garden of Eden that tricked them into partaking of the fruit, you know, the forbidden fruit. And that's why he was cursed to basically be on their belly, because they originally walked. They had legs, you know, and arms, and their curse was to basically become snakes as we know it today, which is quite fascinating when you think about that concept, you know. So I think personally there's a lot of credence and a lot of weight behind the idea that Adam and Eve were not the first. They were the perfected that got corrupted, yes, but they were not the first. And it's these people, the people of day 6, that once Cain was cast out, Cain then ruled over, kind of like a god, because he was an incredibly intelligent human being who was groomed, you know, taught stuff by Adam, who walked with God, you know. And the people of day 6, who were a nomad type hunting people who subdued animals, you know, and hunter-gatherer types, Cain basically came along and civilized them and made them build cities. He taught them weights and measures, as it's written in the book of Jasher, you know. And these extra-biblical texts go on to explain, you know, how Cain taught these people, these primitive peoples, that he, you know, all this knowledge, and then brought them out of their ways and basically corrupted them. And this is how the whole earth got corrupted. And this is why bloodlines are so important in the Bible. This is why it's documented so meticulously from Adam all the way to Jesus. It's because the bloodline had to remain pure from the corruption of the serpent seed. There's all sorts of theories, you know, that a serpentine being, even Lucifer himself, had sex with Eve, and that was Cain's child. The child was Cain, you know. We'll go into that another time, maybe. But this whole idea that Cain then, you know, birthed all these people by mixing with the peoples of day 6 and had daughters and sons and all sorts, and spread himself in within them, you know. And the mark of Cain, it's fascinating, because there's this book called The Lost Book of Lamech. It's an extra-biblical, pseudepigraphical text, you know, that got released recently. And it goes on to explain that Lamech was the 7th generation from Cain. So there's a good Lamech and a bad Lamech. There's a Lamech on Seth's side, who's the father of Noah, and then there's a Lamech on Cain's side, who was the father of Tubal-Cain. Okay. So on Cain's evil side, Lamech is having this issue. He's talking to his father, I think Methuselah or something like that. It's not Methuselah. It's like a weird phrase, different name. And he's asking his father, like, you know, we are the children of Adam. Okay, and we have his mark. We have pale white, sickly, leprous-like white skin, and this is the mark we all have. All the children of Cain are now white-skinned. Not like me, not like a white person, but like leprosy white, like a dead body white. That's what it says in this book. That's the mark we all bear. And he asks this question to his dad. It's like, Dad, how are all these people everywhere? Who did Cain have sex with to create us? What's going on? And his dad doesn't answer the question. He kind of beats around the bush in this book. And Lamech's not satisfied. He's like, that doesn't answer my question. Like, who did Cain have sex with if, like, Adam and Eve were the only 2 people? So Lamech asks this question even then. And even then, this knowledge was hidden, you know, and it was corrupted and buried. And people were confused about where they came from, you know. That's how corrupt the world suddenly became by the 7th generation. Remember, the 6th generation of Seth was Jared. And that's when the angels came down. So Lamech lived just during this time where the angels had already had sex with humans and created giants. So Lamech goes off basically, and he befriends this giant called Uval, and Uval teaches Lamech how to tame Leviathan, it says, so like a giant lizard thing from the sea. And Lamech then says, I want God to talk to me. Why won't God talk to me? You know, and he says, what do I have to do? How do I have to be to commune with God and have a relationship with him? But it says God gives no heed to the people with the mark of Cain. Doesn't even listen to them. He is dead to them, basically. And that's the curse of Cain, you know. So no matter what Lamech did, God was not interested. Because either way, you go on to read, Lamech wasn't serious. You know what I mean? He just wanted the power of the knowledge of talking to God. But his heart was corrupt and wicked, just like his father's. So what he does, he tames this Leviathan, and he goes around and he goes to the city of Enoch, it says, one of Cain's first cities, and he starts asking the people, where do you come from? What's going on here? Where do the people who don't have the mark of Cain come from, if they're not Sethites? You know what I mean? If they're not from Seth's lineage, who may have had a distinct look, I don't know, and you're not from Cain's lineage, who has this mark, this white skin, then who are you? And it doesn't say in the book, but it says he wasn't satisfied with the answers and got offended by the answers. Okay? So he clapped his hands, and Leviathan tore these people apart. And he kept doing that. He went around slaughtering people with this dragon thing he tamed, with a giant as an aid, trying to find out answers to this question. And he never killed anybody. The Leviathan did. And that's how he got around it, not murdering people. Clapped his hands and got the Leviathan to kill people for him, so his hands were clean. You know what I mean? Because he was trying to get close to God, right? See, this is how twisted these people thought. You know, they were messed up. So in the end, he goes around and he's not satisfied with the answers. So he starts his own religion. He also tries to commune with God, and he prays to God for like months on end, and does all the sacrifices that he's told he's supposed to do, with this giant doing them as well, because they want to follow God, they want to talk to God, and God ignores them. So he literally says, well, that was a massive waste of time. That's literally what it says in the book. Like, well, what a waste of time. You know what? I'm going to worship Leviathan instead, because he's right here, right now. He is mighty and vicious and powerful. I'm going to start a religion worshipping Leviathan. And that's what he does, and he goes on to create like biblical like passages and verses preaching to the people of the day, worship Leviathan with me. You know, he starts his own religion. So that's how the Lamech's story kind of balances out, you know. But he asked the same question: who was Cain sleeping with? You know, and the answers weren't given, and he wasn't happy with it, because even he saw these people everywhere and was confused. Where did you all come from? Like, what's going on? You know. And apparently the idea that there were people before his lineage, before Adam, offended him. You know, he was offended. How dare you say that there were people before us, you know? That kind of thing. So it's fascinating when you start digging into this, you know, and read the extra biblical text. Now, obviously, you have to take all of it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of things that don't match up with scripture in these things, but consider them like books of the time, you know. You have to put them into context of when they were written, and you have to obviously discern what is and isn't true, and you know what it's all about perspective rather than the truth, you know. So worshipping Leviathan is a bad thing. We know that Jesus Christ is the only truth, but for the time of the story, it made sense why Lamech would do that, you know, because he was rejected by God, sort of thing. So you've got to take what you can from these things. But I thought that was fascinating. It clears up what the mark was, that it was white, horrible white skin. And we have to remember the Nephilim have white skin because it was the angels who mated with the daughters of Cain who would have had the mark, which they genetically passed on to the Nephilim. So it's fascinating when you start getting all these connections together, you know. But this idea that there was people everywhere is mentioned even in pseudepigraphical texts, you know, and Gary Way makes this solid case for it. And I am inclined to believe it's probably true. And it clears up the incest issue, okay? It clears up a lot of things that atheists like to attack us with. You know, it suddenly makes the Adam and Eve story not seem so ridiculous when you realise it was a part of a bigger... It was actually a smaller story within a bigger story, the Adam and Eve thing, you know? It was a contained story within a bigger, longer narrative, you know? It wasn't that God just created everything, then created Adam and Eve. That's not what happened. There was a time before Adam and Eve where the angels ruled over the creation. God ruled over it, but he had his angels at a high level above the humans which he created, you know. And the established order was going to be changed. Okay? God created Adam in his image, with his knowledge and wisdom. He was basically trying to create Jesus, the first Jesus, you know what I mean? Or it was possible, you know what I mean? It was like, it was a reflection of Jesus, you know, on earth type of thing. Like but it got corrupted. It didn't work. And everything in the Bible from then on is, right, we need to follow the bloodlines and lineages perfectly. And we need to make sure the Sethite bloodline stays pure all the way down to Noah. Then we need to try and reset the earth as best we can, okay? Because some Nephilim obviously made it through, because they're there in Numbers and Deuteronomy. The corruption did make it through. Then we're going to try and slaughter as much of the corruption as we can, which is obviously the culling of Canaanite lands to get the giants out there, the Nephilim out. And it's kind of, we need to follow the bloodlines all the way down, or we need to create a new nation of God's people which can keep the bloodline pure and keep the, you know, try and follow the commandments and rules, so then we can bring Jesus through. And it was planned all the way from the beginning, you know. And I think originally that it wasn't, well, when God created Adam, you know, it was probably initially the plan that this is going to be the case, but the rebellion changed everything, and God said, okay, well, I'll send my son, but we need to do it in the appointed time. There's a process here, you know, and it was perfectly executed, obviously. But it's just fascinating, you know, the people of day 6, the pre-Adamites, I'm inclined to believe it's true. Okay, and look at Gary Wayne's work. There's so much there. There's so much there. I think his new book coming out goes even deeper into it, because it's a contentious issue, you know. Churches are not going to preach this. They're going to say you're a blaspheming idiot straight away. You know, they're not going to even humour it for a second, you know. And I don't know, I think some of the random things I've just scattershot blurted out there in an excited, random way with my mind going crazy. You know, even I've probably said a few things there which make your head turn and go, I never thought about that, you know. And that's basically what this whole thing is. This whole concept is. It's just a series of oh yeah. It's a series of doing that, one point after another. So go and check out Gary's work if you haven't already. I think it's essential research for any Christian. You don't have to believe it, but you should have it in your repertoire of concepts and ideas, just in case stuff does come up which corroborates with it in the future, you know. But it's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, I'm tired. I've been working all day. I have about 5,000 photos to trim down and edit. I'm gonna go. Thanks for listening, guys. And as always, God bless.
I want you to get together.